Oh, I got a rant. I'm watching TV and seeing the riots in Charlotte, North Carolina. My son went to school there, I live there. And I'll tell you what, the real fundamental issue is not about race relations. It's about lack of respect for authority. And I'm going to tell you why. Stick in here with me. And by the way, I've stopped watching the NFL. I'm sick to death of this anti-Americanism. I hate it. You know, I lived overseas, and football is soccer. So when people talk about American football, I think about America. As American as apple pie and football on Thanksgiving. And when I see people desecrate America through their protests, you know, it just takes the American out of football. And just at a visceral level, I'm not that interested in watching these spoiled millionaire brats dump on the very country that has given them their prosperity. What do they have to complain about? Kaepernick. He grew up privileged, elite, maybe self-loathing at this point, I don't know. Think about it. So if it's about respect for leadership, I understand that because I grew up in the late 60s and I was a hippie where my hair was curly and I had an afro, and I hitchhiked around the country in 1971 and went to all the hippie hot spots, and I questioned authority, you know, and it was a good thing maybe at the time. It was Vietnam and it was awful, and I had to register for the draft, and I hated our presence there militarily. So there are a lot of people who question authority today, but they do it in a different way. They do it in a cynical way. Back in the hippie era, there was, at least for me, some kind of hope of a better world. I don't think that that's what a lot of these rioters are looking for. I think they're looking for chaos. I came to my senses about authority when I found my relationship with Christ. And I realized there was worthy leadership in God. Not in man, not in trusting in the arm of flesh, but in God. And having faith in God, there is worthy leadership. But unfortunately, I think that too many of my brothers and sisters of color don't have faith in anything. And God bless their churches that are trying to help them believe in a higher power, because without that, there's no reason to except just destroy the whole place. Unwed mothers make up 75% of the black community. They don't have any fathers. They don't have any discipline. They don't have any leadership. Why do you think there are so many in prison? Because they live this special boy life until somewhere along the line the law comes up with them and says no. Because they never heard no at home. So these poor mothers raising up these kids, trying to teach them some maturity, trying to be the mother and father at the same time, and these kids go wild. The mothers have got to work, or maybe they're on welfare and they just don't give a damn. They're immature. People who don't have traditional families are people whose children suffer because of it. They can't grow up. There are no role models. In tribal times, there were elders to help set the tone and the maturity for the tribe. There are no elders anymore. We're a sibling society. So after my hitchhiking, I became active in my church. And I went to South America. And I was one of those missionaries on bicycles and white shirt, name tags, and ties. And it was a good experience to find out what life is like in other parts of the world. But more importantly, it was good for me to have some worthy, righteous men as my leaders. It taught me how to be a follower of righteousness, of good men. And that's what these kids are missing. There is a burden to leadership. And a lot of men don't want to take it on. A lot of men were reared by their mothers and never learned how to be a man. themselves a worthy man, to help young kids. In order to be a good leader, you have to learn to be a good follower. That does not mean blindly doing what somebody tells you to do, but what it does mean is that you are willing to be initiated into manhood, into caring about other people, into caring about community, into service. And until you learn how to take all that wildness and channel it into serving the community and blessing others' lives, you're going to remain a child. A young man has to be blessed by an older man in order for him to grow up. But that older man does not have to be perfect. He just has to be worthy enough to have been blessed himself. And I mean by God and by other men. This kind of immaturity happens to white men as well as black men, but not in the same proportions. There is a solution, and that is faith in the man Jesus. Were he not the divine Son of God who expiated our sins, there would be no worthy leadership to follow. Faith in Jesus Christ means that we believe there is something to conserve that is good. Otherwise, if everything is just liberal and relative, and there is no greater realm to aspire to, then you know what? Let it all go to hell. Because it doesn't matter anyway.